So thank you very much, Dr. Yonath. This was very, very interesting. And also it was a very good question for the scientific community to work with. Before we start the discussion, there's one housekeeping issue I want to share with you. So all the webinar participants who are using laptops and you want to get to the chat function, please use the full, you need to exit the full screen mode. So that was the housekeeping. So if you want to use the chat, please exit the full screen mode. But now I think that we go to the discussion, and we have 3 requested statements there from our distinguished excellencies, ambassadors of UN. And the first statement is coming from the ambassador of UN ambassador of Czech Republic, Mrs. Shatardova. Please, Mrs. Shatardova.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the floor. Many thanks to our panelists for these outstanding presentations. I am not a scientist, whom I respect greatly, but the topic is very close to my heart, as I had the pleasure of opening the STI Forum in 2018 as the ECOSOC president, and last year I had the honor of being one of its co-chairs. We had many interesting discussions about the importance of new technologies, about the fact that business as usual is not an option if we want to achieve the 2030 agenda. But nobody could last year imagine the situation we face today. The COVID-19 definitely put science in the center of our common response to this pandemic, and its direct impact on all our lives has become more evident than ever. I strongly believe that science has and will always save humanity. For example, look at the unprecedented speed of vaccine development. Of course, as Dr. Dzau mentioned, it is the first important step before mass manufacturing and equitable distribution. But the COVID-19 is not only a health crisis, it is a human crisis with forthcoming deep socio-economic impacts. And I think we need more research, collaboration, data collection, and knowledge sharing. More than ever, a multilateral approach to ensure that science, technology, and innovation serves both strategic and development ends is necessary. There is the pressing need for countries to focus more on elevating science, technology, and innovation in both policy and practical terms. Policy and decision makers rely on scientific information to make evidence-based decisions to control the current outbreak and prevent any future one, if it is possible. We can also see a higher engagement across various disciplines and nationalities of researchers from all institutions to jointly battle this challenge. The interdisciplinary and cross-sector collaboration and innovation are coming out in full force. In the Czech Republic, there are currently numerous initiatives, both from the public and private sectors, aimed at providing rapid tests, medication, and vaccination. Many of those are embedded in international and European partnerships. The initiatives range from academic spin-offs using new technology to identify agents, big data analysis on using new technology, the spread of COVID-19 nationally and internationally, tracing cases via an app called Intelligent Quarantine, something similar to mentioned by my colleague ambassador of Israel, university networks manufacturing sanitizer through novel methods, to the social sciences addressing and supporting the current societal challenges. It also brought a big wave of solidarity. There are indeed many heartbreaking stories of individuals helping the most vulnerable and people in need, to provide basic supplies and offering friendly conversations to combat loneliness due to social isolation. Let me conclude by saying that despite all the negative aspects of this pandemic, we can and we must take it as an opportunity. And it is exactly what the goal of this conference should be. If I may, I would like to ask a question, probably to Dr. Dzau. You mentioned at the end of your presentation, it was your slide, lessons learned. What are the most important lessons learned from this COVID-19 crisis for science and for our work? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for that question. I think you mentioned it, which is sharing data and sharing information very early. I think the sooner we know about an outbreak, the more effective we will have to apply our intervention. So my feeling is detection and immediate sharing of that information. As you said, there are now many innovations which include using digital technology, artificial intelligence to survey the information across the world. And when you begin to see very early cases reported, then everybody should be aware, alert, and begin to think about what actions to be taken. I believe that this will enable a much earlier declaration of the FIAC, the international emergency. This will result in much earlier preparation of countries that can come in with the containment strategy and contact tracing. So early data sharing, ability to know that early detection, and being able to have a system of monitoring and being able to intervene very early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Shatardova. And the next statement is coming from the UN Ambassador of Hungary, Your Excellency, Madame Boguei. Please, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't unmute myself. This is an interesting situation. So thank you very much. Well, first of all, this is an amazingly important gathering here. And I just think that actually science diplomacy is getting visible and finally recognized, such an important tool in diplomacy in the whole world. Obviously, I wanted to take the floor because I'm coming from a country which gave the word in the 19th century, Ignaz Semmelweis. And actually, this scientist and physicist did something very simple, just told the doctors to wash their hands so that the childbed fever could be drastically cut. Washing hands today is still one of the most important initiatives and tools in tackling the virus in the whole world. And of course, in my country, through the World Science Forum for 20 years, through the International Telecommunication Union, World Conferences we've been organizing, and even being committed to support and start the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. We are committed in research and work at the academia, at the universities. There is a very strong program by the government supporting research development and innovation programs. And now during the COVID time, obviously Hungarian researchers and academia are working on all different topics. But I would like to point out again, one of the leading ideas of science diplomacy always came from Julian Huxley, you remember, and the guiding the development of science for the benefit of humanity will therefore imply as he said, the quest for the restatement of morality in harmony with modern knowledge. And I think even today, in the times when we are looking for the cure, we should never forget about the morality of science and use science diplomacy in that. And the morality starts with Pasteur when he said science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity and is the torch which illuminates the world. I always use that when I speak about science diplomacy because really ethically that's the way forward. So I just really wanted to thank you for organizing this conference. Stating the commitment of my country and my government, working with scientists, researchers, doing our best back in my country with all our programs, and continuing our collaboration and cooperation in the world, because that's the only way. Also, I think this is a purifying experience. This is a catharsis if we really think in depth what we are in. So the question is how we will get out from this catharsis, how we will get out from this purifying experience. In science and science diplomacy, I'm asking the two panelists, whom it was a great honor to listen to you, and we learned so much from you. What is the takeaway? What would you like to leave behind, and how would you like to renew and make more effective science diplomacy during and after this crisis? Thank you very much, and thank you for the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wise words. I think that our panelists can give you a statement to your very important question when we are concluding this session. The next requested question and statement is coming from His Excellency of UN Ambassador of Japan, Mr. Hoshino. Mr. Hoshino, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christine. Well, thank you, Israel and Ghana for leading this event, and Japan is very honored to be co-sponsoring this important event. Well, I took the floor because we were so much, informed by Dr. Dzau and Dr. Yonath. Thank you very much for your very informative presentations. You know, I'm a political scientist myself, and seeing this coronavirus issue, which is very new in a sense, but from the perspective, this is a very classic case of human security, which impact on not just the survival of the people, but also the livelihood and even to the dignity of the people. So we all have to work together in solidarity to tackle this virus by combining all knowledge from social science to the medical and physical science and so forth. Well, I'd like to follow up the question and dialogue between Ambassador Chaturdova and Ambassador Dzau, Dr. Dzau, about the data sharing, because I was a bit interested in this actual and potential role of the AI. Because we have some AI platform, we know that there are some AI platform who detected much earlier than the actual announcement are made. But the AI, when it has to work, we have to be very careful about the use of it, wisely use it. Just for the information, Japan last year under the presidency of Japan, the G20 came to agree with the AI principles, saying that the AI has to be used with human-centered way, and transparency and is important, and robustness and security and all those ideas. So it is very important to stick to those important principles. So if I may ask one quick question is, how can we incentivize the health stakeholders, both private and government to, how should I say, promote the interoperability and increase the trust for the promotion of, data ownership or the data sharing, because some of the data can be very, very sensitive and important. And also we may touch upon the new technology like blockchain. How can we, make use of those new technologies? Those are the very quick questions. But thank you very much, Professor Dzau, for mentioning that the EU hosted the Pledge Conference. I appreciate your contribution to that. Japan used that opportunity, and Prime Minister Abe announced our pledge to the virus virus research, about $234 million. But it's always nice to meet you, the scientists who are actually developing. And I appreciate Professor Yonath for mentioning Takeda as a Japanese pharmaceuticals. I'm very proud to have Japanese companies doing something good. Thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoshino. So, Dr. Dzau, would you like to give a short response of the question?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I think the era of data sharing and using it human-centered way is something that all of you can help the scientific community to enable some guidance and policy and incentive to make this happen. Certainly we among scientists have been very much pushing for this. And to the Japanese ambassador, I know that AMET, for example, in terms of Dr. Sumatsu, the former AMET, was a big proponent of data sharing, and particularly in this case, in infectious areas. So data sharing is very important. I think in AI, you can imagine that it's highly dependent on data. Consequently, the data sharing is a very important issue. But AI can be applied even earlier, in my opinion, because today, if there's an unusual case of an infection, usually you have to ask the frontline physician identify this is unusual and takes time. And then once you feel it's unusual, you have to figure out what to do with it and then how to report this. But imagine that you have machine learning, and machine learning being used in terms of a physician or healthcare worker seeing unusual case, immediately recognize is unusual by AI, and then having an automatic reporting to a system that actually will collect similar observation elsewhere. Much earlier, I believe, in the use of AI, you can actually identify and detect, and therefore early intervention. So I agree with you about the use of data in a human-centered way, the issue of privacy. This is something that policymakers have to work with us to enable to happen. But we really would like to see this happen more effectively. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Do we have any questions here? Because it seems that there's a problem with the chat, but do we have any questions from the participants? So it seems that the problems with the chat, hopefully they can be overcome by tomorrow. Okay, there's a question. In order to overcome COVID-19, the world needs to be more inclusive and innovative in so many ways. What are some concrete efforts of the UN can do to improve science, diplomacy, and bridge academic scientists, youth to share knowledge and promote solutions in various fields: food, agriculture, education, medicine, and sanitation? So is it Dr. Dzau or Dr. Yonath who wants to reply on this?
Dr. Yonath, please.
I want to reply on the previous one about AI. Is it okay?
Yes, sure. Please do.
So, AI is, you talked many aspects of AI, or several aspects of AI were already discussed here. And clearly, it's an informatic tool, but it's also scientific tool to understand what happens to the RNA of the virus in the cells. So just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I found a paper talking about bioinformatics, almost AI, that shows that the pieces of RNA it was done on HIV, of the HIV virus in the host cell, the pieces that have to reach the ribosome to be translated, they have functions. They have structures that have functions. And I think that, in my opinion, that if this is shown now for COVID-19, this is a great target for stopping the translation, if we know how the RNA holds within the cell. So it's almost AI, but it will be even better with AI.
I believe that UN has a big role in promoting science through resolution and support. It can certainly ask all member states to support science and to encourage sharing of science, collaboration, and data sharing. I think also importantly, science should be the basis, the foundation for many policy decisions. I think this is very obvious in the times of COVID, where many decisions should be made based on what's best in science or knowledge, and therefore what's best for humankind. And this, I think, crosses all domains, not just medical. I also think economic, because if one makes the right decision based on science, it can have good economic impact and mitigate the economic losses. So I would hope the UN would promote science in a big way, enable us all scientists to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's also another question which is related to UN's role, and it's given the magnitude of the transformation the world is living, how can the UN bridge in more effective manner regional forums of technology innovation with a special attention to regions that are most in need? Would you like to continue with this question?
Yes. Well, I think the challenge, as we have said, and earlier was said by others, about the access to technology, to science, and the proper application of this. Still, many people have no access to internet. Still, many people have no access to the scientific tools that's needed. So I think UN can play a very important role in enabling all countries to have access to this, and along with the multilateral agencies that can provide financial support, I think this would be a very important way to enable countries to build their capacity and to build their science and also other capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say a word on that, Professor Yonath?
No, thank you.
Okay, I think that our time is coming up and we have to conclude this session. I would like to ask the panelists to give 1 minute concluding remarks. So maybe, Professor Yonath, maybe you can start now.
Okay. So as a scientist, and actually I started as a basic scientist, but I went into also manufacturing of drugs or semi-drugs or therapeutics. I think that the UN and the National Academy, the US National Academy, that they started this initiative are on the right way. On the right way to support not only applicative science, but also basic science, which opens the gate for innovation and creativity, also connected to the coronavirus, the COVID-19. So I wish that it continues this way and that all of us together win this war. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this morning. I've certainly enjoyed meeting all of you, and I look forward to hearing some of the discussions that will be carried out for today and tomorrow. I think COVID-19 is a devastating pandemic. It's causing so much human suffering and affecting countries and communities in so many different ways. We must learn from this experience. And there are many lessons learned that we've already discussed. It will be important to be sure that we support the countries for preparedness and appropriate response, to support WHO and other organizations in this context. I think what we learned today also is science is the backbone of many of these responses, preparedness, and decisions. That we must therefore apply the best science to enable us to be ready again for the future. And importantly, we must all collaborate, coordinate, and show solidarity. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about the importance of sharing not only data, but the technology and the vaccines that's going to come down the road, and that is must be equitable distribution for all nations. Thank you very much.
I thank you for the very, very inspiring and interesting session. My serious and deepest thanks for our panelists, because at least I learned a lot about this virus. This has been very good, and I can fully agree with the words of Ambassador Shatardova that we can and we must take this an opportunity, and we must utilize science, technology, and innovations for the benefit of the humanity. We will face other crises after COVID-19, that's for sure. And all the lessons learned from this pandemic and this crisis has to be taken into use for the benefit of the humanity. So thank you very much for your very, very good talks, and thank you very much, Your Excellencies, for very good statements and questions. And I would also like to thank all the participants. I'm sorry about the chat. It didn't work as it should, but it will. And you can always forward your questions to our panelists. And I also would like to thank our organizers for a very good event in these very, very peculiar and difficult times. So keep safe, keep healthy, and probably we will see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.